So it's a simcha to be here again, and we look forward to many more simchas like this. And be'ezras Hashem Yisborach, we hope right after Yom Tov to have this shiur on a steady basis, not only a temporary one once in a while. Chadesh Yomeinu Kikedem. So B'ezrat Hashem, every Sunday night we'll be coming together. Ba'atra Kadisha Hadein Lasok B'divrei Torah. So we are just a few nights before Erev Pesach Shechaliyas B'Shabbos. It is only natural that this is the sugya we should be dealing with. And I wrote many tshuvas and shiurim in this topic. Right next to the door there's a kuntras, which is free of charge. There are some Agodah Shel Pesach's Minchas Osher which are not free of charge. But the kuntras is free of charge. Kol HaKodim Zocho, because I don't think we brought enough for the entire tzibur. But I don't want you to fight over my Torah. So Atznuin Moishchin Yodeyem, the Gemara says, and I don't want to quote the continuation of that maimar. So Erev Pesach Shechaliyas B'Shabbos, many special halachos. The sugya we will be discussing today is shalashudas. We need to eat 3 sudas every Shabbos. Shabbos Daf Kuf Yud Zayin. Chayav Adam Lechol Shalosh Sudas B'Shabbos. Reb Chitke maintains 4, and halacha kemoisai. So the fundamental sugya is the Mishnah in Psochim Mem Tes Omid Aleph and the Gemara Yud Gimel Omid Aleph. Mevaren es hakol lifnei HaShabbos. We do biur chametz on Friday, and Chachamim oimrim bizmanoi. Most Rishonim bizmanoi say Shabbos in the morning. The Rambam paskins Erev Shabbos. And many struggle, why doesn't the Rambam paskin in accordance to Chachamim? The Tzafnis Paneach, the Rogat Shover, is always original. And as most of us know, he focuses only on the Rambam. And sometimes he ignores the other Rishonim. He has a unique and original pshat, Chachamim oimrim bizmanoi. Unlike all the Rishonim that say bizmanoi means Shabbos, that is actually Erev Pesach. Chachamim say milifnei Shabbos, but not 5 minutes before the Shkia, but rather bizmanoi, in the morning. In the same time we do biur chametz every other Erev Shabbos. Even though every other Erev Shabbos we need to do it in the morning, Erev Pesach, every other Erev Pesach we need to do it in the morning, because after Sav Zman Isura you could no longer do bittul chametz. You're not allowed to have chametz. Mishei Shuas v'namalo. When Erev Pesach is chal b'Shabbos, you could wait till the Shkia. Chachamim say no. Bizmanoi, Friday morning, same time you do every year. Gezeira, Oto, other years. So unlike all the Rishonim that say Bizmanoi means Shabbos in the morning, Tzafnis Paneach says in the proper Zman you do it every year, Friday in the morning. And that is the Rambam Shittim. But anyway, Meshayrin Shtei Seudos. We need to leave 2 Seudos. Why 2 and not 3? Because you can't eat shalashudas. Shalashudas is in the afternoon. You can eat not chametz nor matzah. And that is why Mishayer Shtei Seudos. And there are many different opinions. How do we eat those Shtei Seudos? Obviously, one Friday night. Friday night we have no problem at all. Shabbos in the morning, you cannot eat bread only till Sav Zman Achilas Chametz. This year it's going to be 10 o'clock in the morning. So Shabbos in the morning, we all get up early and we daven early. Many people daven within 8. Not everybody does. In our shul, we have a minyan 6:45. Doesn't leave much time to eat chametz. So you eat one Suda Friday night, another Shabbos in the morning, and the Ramah says, Suda Shlishis in the afternoon, Peiros, or even better, Basa v'Dogim. And this brings us to Siman Reish Tzadik Aleph and Hilchas Shabbos, which is the Siman dealing with shalashudas. And the Shulchan Aruch brings 4 different opinions. What is required by Seudo Shlishis? The first opinion is pas, like the first 2. All the 3 Suda Shabbos have the same din. And all 3 Sudas you need to wash over bread. Opinion number 2 is chameshes mina dogan, which means mezonos. Doesn't necessarily need to be bread, but it needs to be mezonos. Opinion number 3, dvorim shemalafsim behem esapas, which means ikar suda, basa v'dogam. The most lenient opinion is number 4, even peiros. So the Ramah writes, Erev Pesach shechaliyas b'Shabbos. What do you eat for shalashudas? We rely on opinion number 3 or number 4. Preferable number 3, basa v'dogam. But b'shas chak, you could even rely on opinion number 4, which is peiros. Even though the Shulchan Aruch says, ikar hadin, like opinion number 1, pat, bread, but because it's a shas chak and we can't eat bread, therefore we rely on opinion number 3 and 4. That is the Ramah, that is Minig B'nai Ashkenaz. Shulchan Aruch says, Matzah ashiro. And the Sephardim take a matzah, they fry it, tigun, b'shemen, matzah ashira, and they wash the shalashudas in the afternoon. The Ramah writes, Minig Ashkenaz is not to eat matzah ashura on Pesach, and not even Erev Pesach. And that is why the Ramah says we rely reluctantly on opinion number 3 or 4 in Reish Tzadik Aleph. Peiros, preferably, basa v'dogim. The Magen Avraham writes, and all this is in Siman Tov Mem Daled Seif Aleph, Magen Avraham recommends splitting the Suda in the morning. You wash, you eat some fish, you bench, you wash again. So you have shalashudas of pas. However, Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah agree that the ikar zman for Suda Shlish is in the afternoon. So you eat once again basa v'dogam in the afternoon. The Magen Avraham was an Ashkenazi, so he can't recommend matzah ashira like the Sephardim. So he recommends 3 Sudas pas, 1 by night, 2 in the morning, and then in the afternoon, basa v'dogam. So on one hand, we have 3 Sudas mina pas, and that is lechatchila. On the other hand, we have shalashudas in the afternoon, that is lechatchila. It is the best we could do. I can't say what our minhag is. Many act according to the Magen Avraham, which is also quoted in the Mishnah Berurah. I can say what my minhag is. I do not split the Suda in the morning. There's not much time to do that. And the Chazon Ish writes in one of his letters in Igros Chazon Ish, in order it should not be entirely a brocha she'ein asicha, we need to have a hefsek of approximately a half hour between one Suda and the other. Time becomes very tight. And if you don't have it very early with the nates, you don't really have time to split the morning Suda. And therefore, our minhag is in accordance to the Ramah. The Ramah writes, 1 Suda by night, 1 in the morning. Shalashudas, we rely on the opinions that you're yoitz in the afternoon with basa v'dogam or peiros. Some kuntreisim, and there's no minhag. Every shul has about 50 alonei Shabbat, probably in your shul as well. And people are busy with these pamphlets that are in every shul, Friday night. So somebody showed me in some of these pamphlets a recommendation to split the Suda by night. Well, by night we have enough time, no pressure. So you can have 2 Sudas by night, take a walk between Suda number 1 and Suda number 2, And that is how we have 3 Sudas Menapas. I disagree. And I wrote in my Chuvas that the fact that all the poskim deal with this dilemma, how do we have 3 Sudas? And none of the poskim until present day Rabbonim recommends splitting the Suda by night. And this is a very fundamental rule to me, which I teach my Talmidim many times. The Beis Meir writes, Stimas HaRishonim is more important than Perushei Achronim. None of the great poskim of yore give this eitzah, having 2 Sudas by night and 1 in the morning. And even though there is a machlokes in the Rishonim, whether shalashudas needs to be in the afternoon or it could be before chatzos, and that is why the Magen Avraham recommends splitting the Suda in the morning, because according to some Rishonim, you could have 2 Sudas in the morning. Everyone agrees you cannot have 2 Sudas by night. Ikar Suda Shabbos b'yoyim, kvoid yoyim odef mekvoid lailo. You have 2 Sudas by day. The Shulchan Aruch paskins, 1 in the morning and 1 needs to be in the afternoon. Some poskim say no, they both could do it in the morning. But you cannot have 2 Sudas by night and only 1 by day. That is not derech ha'olam. It's not derech oinik Shabbos. Kvoid yoyim odef mekvoid lailo. And therefore we find no source in any of the Rishonim or the great poskim that you could have 2 Sudas Shabbos by night and 1 by day. And therefore, Sfardim, each shalashudas in the afternoon, Matzah Shiro. Sfar Ashkenazim don't. So according to the Ramu, 1 by night, 1 early in the morning before Sof Zman Achilas chametz. In the afternoon, Bosav Edogam or Peiris. The Magen Avraham recommends making 2 Sudas in the morning. But you need to have some hefsek between 1 and 2. Leave your house, sheni mokum, wait a half hour, and not always is that possible. So according to the Ramah, 1 Suda in the morning and in the afternoon, Bosav Edogam or Peiris. You need to dispose of the chametz after you ate in the morning. How to dispose? First of all, we already did Bir Chametz Friday. Friday, you burn your lulav and your adasim together with the chametz, and you say the tefillah. Shabbos in the morning, it's just important to dispose. You don't have chametz in your possession. So the poskim say, mefarer v'zorah leruach. Most of the years, Erev Pesach, there's not much ruach. So if you have an Erev, you could throw it out of your window and rely on the Orvim. Our Orvim are very mafunak. They're not excited about some breadcrumbs. In all likelihood, they look for something which is more appealing to them. So you could flush down the sink. I don't like flushing bread down the toilet. It's not kvoid pas. But after all, we need to get rid of it. In my opinion, you could just throw it out in the mechalei ashpa ironiyim. When you drop it into those big cans, that is biur gamur. It is better than chometz shenafla olav mapoyle sholosh tvochim, which is kimevuar. So before Saf Zman Isur, you throw out whatever is left into those big mechalei ashpa ironiyim. I don't know whether they're in Rechavi as well, but they're all over Yerushalayim, and that is Bir Chametz. Tavshin. The ones that are both below ground are preferable, but you could also throw them out in the big ones that are above ground. Tavshin Samaches. We had Erev Pesach Shechali is b'Shabbos.
The cans are inside the reshus of the houses, or they just take it out when the garbage truck comes?
Is that still what you have in Rechavia? Really? Garbage cans in the reshus of the houses? Interesting. because this is a rich neighborhood. All over town, there are these big modern mechalei ashpa which are underground.
What about matzah mevushelet? Why can't we eat matzah mevushelet?
The question of matzah ashira or matzah mevushelet is twofold. So Hasidim are makbid on shruya. Matzah ashira, according to the Gra, is a isser. It is either mechashash chametz or rather isser achilas matzah. And regarding the isser of achilas matzah, be'erev Pesach, there's a lot of controversy. What type of matzah is prohibited to be eaten erev Pesach? Some maintain every matzah in any shape or form, even kleidlach, knedlach, or matzah mevushelet, or cake that is made of kemach matzah, all is included in the prohibition in the isser of achilas matzah erev Pesach. And that is why matzah ashira, matzah mevushelet, is not a solution for Bnei Ashkenaz. Yeah. So, this is what the poskim say, and they don't deal with matzah mevushelet. Maybe because it's just a terche to prepare for Erev Shabbos matzah mevushelet. So Tovshin Samach, remember we finished davening. It was about 20 minutes before Sof Zman Isor. I'm rushing on my way home, and a person approaches me and he says, I just got up. What should I do? I didn't daven yet. And it's about 15 to 20 minutes. We could still eat chametz. So I'm rushing home. I also need to wash and finish eating chametz before Zman Isor. So I just made some calculations spontaneously, and I told him, daven, you're not going to find a minyan now, because everybody already davened. Daven, and then wash and eat a kibetza matzah. Seemed to be a big chiddush, but that's what I thought in the spur of the moment. And later when I had time, I went through the halacha, and I think I gave him a proper psak. And this is what I want to discuss right now. 3 options. What should he do? Well, if he could daven fast, say, Berchus HaShachar, Baruch Shomer Ashrei, Berchus Kis Mishmoyne, and then rush home and wash and eat a kazayas bread, that is preferable. But by the time I gave him my psak, it was too late to do that as well. So he has 3 different options. He could daven, and he won't have shalashudas. He won't have a second suda menapas. One option. Being mevatel, 2 sudas menapas. Option number 2, wash, eat some bread, bench, and then daven. Option number 3, daven and eat matzah. And I think option number 3 is the lesser evil, the Rabbi Miyutoi, and that was my psak. So let's analyze the 3 options. How important is it to eat shalashudas and shalashudas menapas? I quoted the basic source, Shabbos Kuf Yud Zayin, Chayav Odom Lechol Sholosh Seudos, and the Gemara dashens it from Pashas Beshalach, from Pashas Aman. 3 times in Pashas Aman we find the word Hayom. Ichluhu Hayom. Hayom lo timsa'uhu basodam. 3 times Hayom. It is from here that Chazal learn person needs to eat sholosh seudos. Yesh omrim that it's min ha-Torah. Kach kosev halavush. Simen reish tzadik aleph. And this opinion is found in some of the Rishonim. The Mishnah Brura Reish Tzadik Aleph writes that this is a din d'Rabbanon, and it is an asmachta. So you all know what an asmachta is. D'Rabbanon ve'asmechoho akra. Many times in Shas we find that mitzvahs that are d'Rabbanon, but Chazal based the mitzvah on psukim. Now, In Shas we find two different dinim of asmachta, and let us not be confused. One din of asmachta belongs to Choshe Mishpot. Asmachta kanya, asmachta lo kanya. It's not what we are discussing right now. That is another opportunity. That is in Dina Kenyonim. I'm talking about an asmachta many times in Shas. The Rabbanon v'kra asmachta. So the Mishnah Brura maintains, shalashudas is a din derabanan. And when the Gemara dashens it from Parshas Haman, that is an asmachta. How do we define asmachta? Minchas Osha Moedim Chelak Aleph Siman Zayin, there's a big arichas. And I brought the Ritva. Ritva Rosh Hashanah Daf Tet Zayin in the Sugi of Malchi Zechroin and Shoifris. The Ritva writes a Chiddush, and the Ritva says, those who think that asmachta is just like any other din derabanan, and Chazal for some reason, artificially, superficially, based their own ruling on psukim, zudas minus. The Ritva writes that's apikoursis. Asmachta is kavonas haTorah. That's pshat in posik. For some reason, it's not mefurish, but it is kavonas haTorah. And in Minchas Osher, I quoted and I wrote, what the Ritva considers minus is the opinion of the Rambam, Toises and Menachos Tzadik Gimel, and the Maharil. The Maharil and the Rambam offer two different interpretations of asmachta. The Rambam and Toisves explain, in days of yore, Dvorim Shamal Peh Yatur Shayla Omram B'chsav. How would we expect people to remember the entire Shas if nothing could be written down? So all they learned was from a Sefer Torah, Dvorim Shebechsav. So the Chachamim had an urge, an incentive to be masmich devreim al psukei HaTorah. People should memorize. People should remember. When you learn a posuk and you remember all the asmachtas, all the dinim that are associated and based and interpreted by this posuk. So according to the Rambam, asmachta is totally the Rabbanon. And the reason the Chachamim decided to attach or connect their chidushim with psukei HaTorah is just to enhance memory. People should be able to remember. The Maharil has a different interpretation, and the Maharil says, asmachta is kedei shelo yezalzelu b'divrei chachamim. And that is why they pretended as if it is a dioraisa, which is a chiddush. But nevertheless, according to the Ritva, asmachta yesh bo chumri yesera. I also brought some achronim that say, Sveike de Rabbana Lakola, Sofek Asmachta La Chumra. And that is based on the Ritva. So shalashudas, yesh oimre men HaTorah, yesh oimre med Rabbanon. It is an asmachta, and the Rambam, the Tur, and the Shulchan Aruch and Simarei Tzadik Aleph, all right, yezoher me'oid to each shalashudas. And the first two sudas must be passed. So I don't think the right thing to do would be to just forego Sudas Shabbos. Option number 2, eat before davening. That's a Gemara in Brochas Daf Yud. And once again, Droshes Chazal on the Posuk Lo Yisochlu Al Adam. 3 different interpretations of this posuk. One of them is Osor Lechol Lefnei Shemispalel Lo Yisochlu Al Adam. And Chazal also are mafarish a posuk in Divrei Anovi Oisi Hishlachto Achorei Gavyacho Al Tikre Gavecho Ela Gayecho. Omer HaKadosh Baruch Hu La'achar Shenizgo Hazeh Kibel Al Atzmo Olam Malchus Shemayim. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, And very few sources in Shas Chazal speak in the name of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Kodesh Baruch Hu was angry, and a Kodesh Baruch Hu says, what a balgaiva. After he ate and drank and took care of his physical needs, now he's Mekabel Ol Malchus Shemayim. So obviously, this once again is a halacha chamura. Is it min haTorah or midarabanan? The Rambam in Shorish Tes in Sefer HaMitzvos in the Shloshim of the Hagdama, the Rambam deals with the concept of lav shebachlalos ein loikin olav. Lav shebachlalos is a lav which has various different interpretations. And because it has different interpretations, lav shebachlalos ein loikin olav. And one of the examples that Rambam brings for a lav shebachlalos is lo yisochlu al adam. Mashma medivrei Rambam, we're dealing with a diuraisa. And the reason there is no malchus is because there are three different pshotim in the posuk lo yisochlu al adam. On the other hand, Perek Vav Melchus Tefillah, the Rambam writes, before davening, it's asur, it is a prohibition to eat, or yasa malachtoi, or she'ilas shalom. If lo yisochlu al adam is a diuraisa, it only refers to eating before davening, has nothing to do with malacha or she'ilas shalom. And if the Rambam writes these three halachas together, they're probably the same nature and the same chumrah. So this is mashmitz midarabanan. So this is a discussion. If tefillah is midarabanan, the isser to eat before tefillah cannot be diuraisa. And that is a machlokes Rambam and Ramban. The Rambam in the very first halacha in Hilchos Tefillah, and once again in Sefer HaMitzvos, mitzvahs asay hey, the Rambam writes, mitzvahs asay shel Torah sheyispalel odom b'chol yom. The Ramban disagrees, and the Ramban says tefillah is only a mitzvah derabanan. So according to the Ramban, lo yisochlu al adam also lechor lifnei tefillah can be min haTorah because tefillah is derabanan. According to the Rambam, yesh la'ayin. Because even though the Rambam writes, it is a chiyuv Torah to daven once a day, but the Rambam clearly says, how many tefillahs, zman tefillah, nusach ha-tefillah are midrabanan. You need to daven once a day, whatever you say, and whenever you say it. It could be tzei sekechov, it could be alois shachar, it could be chatzai sayom. So according to the Rambam, would it be reasonable to maintain that the isser to eat before davening is min haTorah? Not really. Because if you could daven whenever you wish throughout the day, is it reasonable that it's also to eat before davening? But maybe it is. You need to daven every day. You cannot eat before davening. So probably most people will prefer to daven in the morning. They should be able to eat. So this is a discussion. When the Gemara darshans lo yisochlu al adam, is it a drosha Gemara or an asmachta? Once again, that is a discussion. And this halacha is a halacha chamura. Option number 3. Daven, wash, and eat some matzah. What is the isser to eat matzah Erev Pesach? It is not found in Bavli, only in Yerushalmi and Psochim Dav Samaches. O oichal matzah b'Erev Pesach keboal arusosoi bebeis chomev. What's the nimshal? What do these two things have in common? Obviously, in essence, they have nothing in common. Bol arusosoi bebeis chomev, and aruso is also. You all attended many chuppahs. Did you listen to Berchas Erusin? Asher kedushono b'mitzvoisa v'tzivono al ha'arusois v'tzivono al ha'aroyos v'osar lono es ha'arusois v'hiter lono es hanesuos lono al yidei chuppah v'kedushin. So, husband and wife being together is a great mitzvah. Priorvia, Kiddushas Hazivug, but that is only be'itoi ubizmanoi. Too early, a mitzvah could be an aveira. Only after chuppah v'kiddushin. So Chazal say it's just a very fundamental or kesha. Eating matzah b'leila seder is a big mitzvah. But if you do it before its proper time, it's not a mitzvah, maybe even aveira. But what is the essence of this Isser? Why? What is the nature, the essence of the Isser to eat matzah Erev Pesach? Two different pshotim in the Rishonim. The Rambam Perek Vav Halacha Yud Beis of Hilchos Chametz Matzah writes, Kedei sheyeh heker la'achilosoi b'laylo. We want it to be obvious that we eat matzah b'leila seder l'shem mitzvah, not because we're hungry and not because we like matzah. So according to the Rambam, it is a heker. It should be nikar that this is achilas mitzvah. The Meiri Daf Yud Gimel Psochim has a different approach. And the Meiri writes, Mechuar hadavar. It's not right. It's not nice. La'achar shemile kreisoy mematzah, yoichal matzahs mitzvah shaloi leteyavoin. This is a mitzvah which we have once a year. You need to be mekayim this mitzvah b'simcha, b'hislavis. And you're going to eat matzah all day Erev Pesach, leyachar shemile kreisoy, yoichal matzah shaloi leteyavoin. According to the Meiri, the Chiddush of the Yerushalmi, Osar lechol matzah b'Erev Pesach, is the same nature as the Mishnah. The first Mishnah in Erev Pesach, Samach Lamincha, Osar lechol kedei sheyochel matzah l'tayavoin. So there are two different approaches in the Rishonim. Why is it also to eat matzah Erev Pesach? Either because of heker or sheyochel matzah l'tayavoin. This does not seem to be an aveira chamura, and it is also not brought in the Bavli. And this brings us to a fundamental question, dilemma in hashkofas hahalacha. Probably the right terminology would be the philosophy of halacha, but it doesn't sound right, so I say hashkofas hahalacha. How do we deal with the situation we find the halacha in Yerushalmi and it is not to be found in Bavli? Does that have any significance? We all know that halacha is based on Shas Bavli and not on the Yerushalmi. And if there ever is a stira, a contradiction between Bavli and Shalmi, the halacha is always according to the Bavli. Maybe we'll explain this at another opportunity. We don't have time for this today. Why is it? Why is it that Kol Rabbeinu Harishonim wrote commentary and they were mefarish every line in Bavli? Rashi, Toises, Ramban, Rashbo. They all concentrated on the Bavli, and none of them wrote a Perush on the Yerushalmi. The Rambam did write a Perush on the Yerushalmi, but we don't have it. The Rambam writes that he wrote a Perush on the Yerushalmi. How do we deal with a situation in which there is no contradiction, no machloikis, but we find the Halacha in Yerushalmi, and it's not in the Bavli? And it's not coincidence. It's not some strange story that happened. This halacha, osor lechol matzah be'erev Pesach, is nogea lekol ish Yisrael ba'asher hu bekol shona v'shona. It's nogea for every Jew every year. So why isn't it found in the Bavli? And that is a fundamental question. We had a similar dilemma just 2.5 weeks ago, Purim HaMishulash. So you don't need to have a great memory to remember what did we do in Yerushalayim, Purim HaMishulash. When did we eat Sudas Purim? Sunday. Why not Shabbos? That's a Yerushalmi Megillat Afei, which is not found in Bavli. The Yerushalmi says you can't have Sudas Purim on Shabbos because the Megillah says, Lasois oisam yemei mishto v'simcha. Misha asiyosoi tolui bebezdin. Shabbos asiyosoi tolui b'dei shomayim. And that is why Lasois oisam yemei mishto v'simcha cannot be on Shabbos. Because you don't make Shabbos. Lasois oisam asiyosoi tolui bebezdin. That's a Yerushalmi. It's not on Bavli. The Ralbach. Shuvas Ralbach. Reb Levi ben Chaviv was the Rav in Yerushalayim more than 500 years ago. And the Ralbach says, this halacha is not found in Bavli, only in Yerushalmi, and therefore, ein halacha kemoisoi, and we in Yerushalayim make Sudas Purim on Shabbos, and we give Mishloach Monos on Shabbos. That's the opinion of the Ralbach. Mishnah Berurah quotes the Ralbach. However, Shulchan Aruch and the two Paskin according to Yerushalmi. We make Sudas Purim on Sunday. And that is what we all did. All Yerushalmi, just 3 weeks ago. We have a similar dilemma regarding Isser Achilas Matzah Be'erev Pesach. And I think here the argument is far more powerful. Because the question of Purim HaMishulish is only Nogea very few people throughout the world. Only Mukofim. It's not Nogea for Prozi. Because since the days of Chazal, Yud never falls on Shabbos. However, the Isser Achila Matzah B'Erev Pesach is Nogea every year for every Yid. Unlike Purim HaMishulish, which is only for Mukofim and only once in a while. However, the Rambam, the two of the Shulchan Aruch, all paskin also lechol matzah be'erev Pesach. And they do not pit the Bavli against the Yerushalmi. I think the argument of the Ralbach by Purim HaMishulish is based also on Stimas HaRambam. And that is a more powerful argument than Stimas HaGemara. The Gemara is not systematic and organized. That is the nature of Shas. And we should not expect Chazal to relate to every possible question. It's not the way it is. But the Rambam, who is a Loch HaLamaisa, why doesn't the Rambam say, when do we do Sudas Purim? So when the Ralbach rejects the Yerushalmi, it is not only based on Stimas HaBavli, it is primarily based, his argument, on Stimas HaRambam. In our case, the Rambam paskins the Yerushalmi. And therefore, without doubt, you cannot eat Matzah Erev Pesach. But the question is, how chomer is that compared to not eating shalashudas or compared to eating before davening? So I am aware that a choila is allowed to eat before davening. And the Rishonim say that's not derech gaiva. He's ill. Could we argue the same regarding achilas mitzvah? If I'm just washing because I need to eat shalashudas, is that derech gaiva? But we find no source that achilas mitzvah is mutter before davening. And we cannot be machadish halachos just misvoras aleiv. A choila is not derech gaiva. But if you're not ill, you're not sick, you don't need to eat, you cannot eat before davening, even if it is achilas mitzvah. We find no source that you could eat achilas mitzvah before davening. Is there significance, would one argue, if the entire Issa to eat matzah before an Erev Pesach is only because heker? Well, if I eat a kazayas or a kabetza early in the morning, there still is a heker. If it is kadeshi yochel matzah letayavoin, well, if I eat a kazayas or a kabetza 9 o'clock in the morning, I will still eat letayavoin 10 o'clock by night. that is not really an argument. One of the fundamental concepts in halacha is the reasoning of halacha does not always dictate its details. Tamei halacha einam kovim et prateim v'dikdukeim. And if Chazal say, Osor lechol matzah be'erev Pesach, Osor lechol matzah be'erev Pesach, and it doesn't matter how much you eat or how early you eat. However, regarding this entire Issa, there are three different opinions in the Rishonim. One opinion is, the Issa doesn't apply only mizman Isur achilas chametz, m'shei shos ve'lamala. As long as you could eat chametz min haTorah, you could eat matzah as well. The Meiri brings this opinion, Sefer HaOgur, Kama v'Kama Rishonim. Most Rishonim maintain, and that is the Shulchan Aruch from Alois Shachar. Some Rishonim maintain, Leil Yudalid, Mishkia Ortzei Sakechovim, the entire day, not only from the morning. We paskin from the morning. But there is an opinion, only mechatzos, m'shei shuas ve'lamala. So after this entire presentation and analysis, my psak was, eating matzah Erev Pesach in the morning is also, but out of the three possibilities, no one says it's also min haTorah. It is not an aveira chamura, mishum heker oy kedei sheyochel et yavoin. That was my psak.
So it's not is only when the grow. The grow later. It's probably anyways davening later. Because Kushma Khan said after this.
Well, that might be a consideration, but I think one should always be machmer kishitas hamogen Avraham, and in Isser achilas chametz as well. So because b'shas haTchak we are soymech al das yochid, yoredeis emereish membeis, machlokes taz and shach, whether that is only by a derabanan or even a dioraisa. Here we're dealing with a derabanan, and the opinion that in the morning it's mutar, ad shas Isser achilas chametz is definitely a derabanan, and this is a shas tchak, and therefore my psak was eat matzah. And I was happy when I had time to learn this halacha more fundamentally. Chasam Sofer, not in the Tshuvas, and that is why I wasn't aware of this Chasam Sofer. Chidush Chasam Sofer Chelek Aleph, at the end of Masechet Psuchim, 2 or 3 pages on Hilchos Pesach, Siman Tov Mem Daled. The Chasam Sofer says, if a person didn't eat Suda Shabbos Min HaPas in the morning, Erev Pesach Shechal Yes B'Shabbos, he should eat matzah ad sho asiris. Not only in the morning, even in the afternoon, he should wash ad sho asiris, samach lamincha, and eat matzah. Kedei lo levatel suda shalishus. Kal v'chomer benidon nidan. shalashudas Mishnah Sochia. Rabbi Yisachar Shlomo Teichtal, one of the greatest gedolim in Hungary. I'm a big admirer of Rabbi Yisachar Shlomo Teichtal. shalashudas Mishnah Sochia. He also wrote Ema Bonim Semecha. He was tragically killed after surviving the Holocaust. He was in a cellar in Budapest the entire period. And after the war was over, and some organization gave out bread to the Jewish remnants, and a Ukrainian guy snatched away the bread from a Nebuchadnezzar Jew, and the Mishnah Socha started fighting around with that guy, and the Yidden begged him and pleaded with him, these are dangerous people. Shut up. Move away. But he couldn't see that a Jew was hurt, and those guys killed him. Those Rishonim killed him. That was after the war was over. Hashem Yinkom Domai. And he was one of the greatest Gedolim in Hungary. In his Shuvas, Orachaim Kuf Samach Beis Kuf Samach Gimel, he also deals with the question of a person that got up late, a little later than my Shoyel. And he got up, it was after Savzman Achilas chametz, and he paskins, he should wash and eat matzah. And if he anyway ate matzah, he could eat matzah shalashudas in the afternoon as well, before shalashudas. Im karbol arisosoy bebeis chamav, he might as well do it again. Which sounds a bit strange. I definitely don't think he would give that psak actually by boal arisosoy bebeis chamav, chas v'sholom. But regarding matzah, he says, if we already ate matzah Erev Pesach, you might as well be mekayim the mitzvah of Suda Shlishis ala pas la'acha chatzois. That is the lechatchila. And he proves it from the same Chasam Sofer I quoted. It's a bit complicated, so I won't go into details. I just want to say, this psak makes sense according to the Rambam, that the Isar Achila Erev Pesach is Mishum Hekel. And if he already ate matzah anyway, then it wouldn't make a difference how much he ate. If it is Mishum Te'avoin, one could argue, the less the better. The more you eat, there is more chashash than Shelo Yochel Matzah L'Te'avoin. So maybe this psak would be dependent on the two reasonings. What is the essence of the issur to eat matzah on Erev Pesach? So I agree with the psak eating the first Suda, but now with the psak eating shalashudas as well. Shalashudas, we rely on the Ramah, Bosav Adogim, or Peres.
But obviously, if there is Matzah Shiur, it would be better than...
Definitely. But we're dealing with an Ashkenazi that has no Matzah Ashira. He can knock on the door of his Sephardi neighbors and ask for some Matzah Ashira. That definitely would be preferable than eating normal Matzah, definitely. But Ashkenazim, usually won't have any Matzah Ashira. So we discussed the question of shalashudas, Erev Pesach Shechaliyas b'Shabbos, and I discussed the various different minhagim, and an interesting shaila, and different discussions in the various different halachos that are relevant to Erev Pesach Shechaliyas b'Shabbos. Let us talk a bit about this magnificent night. I always say, Yidden have many magnificent days, but they have two special magnificent nights, Leil Kol Nidrei and Leil Seder. Very different in essence. But the combination of these two magnificent nights is the essence and the tamtzes of Avodas Ukeil, Dechilu and Rechimu, Ahavo and Yira. Leil Kol Nidrei is Yira, Emas Yoim Hadin, the essence of Koved Rosh. Leil Seder, Lailo Ki Yoim Yoyom. It is all about Ahavo. So these two nights together are the essence of Avodas Ukeil. People struggle what to make of the Haggadah. Haggadah Shel Pesach seems to be a compilation of various different mamorim without Seder. What is it? Does it have structure? And structure is so important. When I was a young boy, one of my very first inspirations was the Ramchal. And I started learning Sifra Ramchal. I was young, and I don't think I really understood the depth of Toras Ramchal, but I was so moved and inspired by the Seder, by the structure. Everything in the Ramchal is so beautiful and so mesuda, so orderly. And he has the famous mashal of the forest and the botanical garden. and he says, you might have the same plants and the same flowers in the forest. But in the botanical garden, it is the Seder that makes the difference, that brings out the beauty of what you see. And I think Seder HaHaggadah is so magnificently structured, and Anshe Knesset Agdola Beruach HaKodesh U'Ba'omek Binasam. Haggadah Shel Pesach has 3 parts, 1, 2, and 3. The first section starts off with the most fundamental, simple question that every child would ask. Ma nishtana alayla azeh mekol haleilos. What is this all about? Why is this night different than all the others? And then we start to explain. Matchel begnus u'mesayim b'shmach. Machloikes Rav and Shmuel. Which gnus and which shevach? Rav says, Metchila oivda avodah zora hoyu avoseinu. It's about ruchnius. Shmuel says, no. It's about freedom. Avodah mayinu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu etzienu lecherus. Rabbeinu Hananel says, we do both. And that's the Rambam. And that's the Minhag Kol Beis Yisrael. The Ritvo explains it's not even a Machloikes Rav and Shmuel. The Machloikes is only Mugdam and Ma'uchar. Which first, which second. But both agree that we need to focus on both spiritual aliyah and physical salvation. So the night begins with Avodah Mayinu as a response to the question Ma nishtana. And the first part of the Haggadah is a compilation of Mamorim, how important it is, the mitzvah of Sipi Yetzias Mitzrayim. And how important it is that everyone, afilu kolona chachomim v'kolona nevonim, we all need to tell the story. And Gedolei Atanoim, the greatest of our sages, told the story. So the first section, the last paragraph is V'hi sha'amdo lavoseinu v'lonu. שלא יחד בלבד עומד עלינו לחלוסנו, ושבכל דור ודור והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו. And that is why it is important to tell the story. It's not only about remembering the past, it is about deriving chizuk for the present and for days to come. Because our tzaras are not over. We are in Gullus. And we need this chizuk. Kamo shekosav Ramban b'sof Parshas Boi. Why do we need to remember Yetzias Mitzrayim? Ki men ha'nisam ha'gedolim v'ha'mefarsamim od ha'moida b'nisam ha'nestorim shehem yesod kol ha'toira kulo. Ein lanu chelik b'toiras Moshe. Ad sheneda shekol dvorenu v'mekrenu hem nisim ein behem teva v'minhagoi shel olam. So when we quote the Ramban, people usually understand that nature is a miracle. The Ramban doesn't really mean nature. Kol dvorenu v'mekrenu. He means our story. The story of the Jews is one miracle. And when we remember the Nisam HaGedolim v'Mefarsamim, we believe in the Nisam HaNistorim. We are a miraculous people. Am Yisrael has nothing to do with Teva. I always say, in the course of human events, in the course of history, we should have been 2 or 3 pages in history books. Somewhere between the Roman Empire and ancient Troy, it would be said, we would read, there were a people that call themselves the Jews. They claimed to be descendants of the patriarchs. You know who the patriarchs were, yeah? They claimed to be descendants of the patriarchs, of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. They rose to prominence when their dynamic and charismatic leader, Moshe Rabbeinu, brought them out of bondage and made them a free people, and they sank into oblivion when their temple was destroyed, so-and-so BC or AC or whatever it is. That would be nature. That would be natural. But we're not part of history books. We're alive and we're thriving. And miraculously, we're doing quite well. 300 years ago, Rabbi Yaakov Emden writes in Sulam Beis El, in his introduction to his magnificent Seder, Shari Shemayim. My Rebbe, the Klosenberger Rebbe, used to quote this Rabbi Yaakov Emden very often. Chai Roishi, that is an expression of a Shavua. Kasher ani mizboinem bekiyum klal Yisrael begol aseh achaz ben shivim ze'evim. When I just think about the fact that we exist, Godel hanes hazeh b'yeinai, yoiseh mekol hanisim shenasu lavesenu b'Mitzrayim al hayam u'b'Eretz Yisrael. The fact that we're around is a greater miracle than Aseres HaMakas and Kriyas Yam Suf and Mamed Har Sinai. He wrote that 300 years ago, and I wonder, what would he write today? What have we been through in the last 300 years? What terrible nisyonis in ruchnius and physical. The greatest tragedy, the greatest homicide in the history of the world was the Shoah. Nobody believed 80 years ago. My parents were both survivors. My Rebbe was the ultimate survivor, the Klosenberger Rebbe that lost his wife and his entire family, 11 children. And I spoke to them so many times. No one believed 80 years ago that 80 years down the line, this is how we will be. Coming back to our promised Holy Land after 2,000 years, livnois, lihibonois, to spread Torah in the entire world. I was in Mexico 2 weeks ago. I was in Brazil a month and a half ago. Wherever you come in the world today, Yiddishkeit is thriving and growing and prospering. And so many people are coming back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is an amazing time, an amazing age. And this is a miracle. What would Rabbi Yaakov Emden write today? I could only imagine he would write, I just guess, because what else could he write? If 300 years ago he wrote, I don't like quoting Goyim, but sometimes it's important. 100 years before Rabbi Yaakov Emden, the story goes, there was a French philosopher and mathematician, very well known, Blaise Pascal. And the king of France asked him, do you have scientific proof that HaKadosh Baruch Hu exists? Scientific proof. And Pascal said, yes. One word, the Jews. The Jews prove that someone up there is watching over them. They shouldn't be around. And they are. And that was 400 years ago. So in the first part of the Haggadah, it is just to stress how important this is, to keep the story alive, doer achar doer, to tell the story of Nisim v'Neflois, because we will need these stories in every generation. We need to remember, because I said so many times in the past 17 months, in these painful 17 months, not all of us feel the pain. Thousands of young people, most of them soldiers, lost their lives. Tens of thousands injured. Many amputees. I know some of them that lost their eyesight. And there are still a hostage out there. Begait Salmoves. This was such a painful time, but we also saw every day we saw every day we've been seeing Nisim Nistorim every day. So I said so many times how wonderful it would be if there would be breaking news in all the outlets. miraculously, all the waters in Gaza and in Lebanon turned red. And the greatest chemists analyzed the water, and they said, it's actually blood. And nobody understands, nobody could figure out how this happened. And the world is still grappling with this crazy phenomena. New breaking news. A zillion frogs came out of nowhere, and they overran Lebanon and Gaza, totally disrupting communications and transportations and every social activity. And that one frog crossed the Lebanese border into Israel. It didn't happen, Rabbi say. And don't expect it to happen tomorrow, because it won't. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu writes in his Torah, V'unoichi haster asti aponai b'yoim hahu. But you need to open your eyes and believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is watching over us. And that is why it is important to tell the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, to keep the story alive, and from one generation to the other. And that is why the last paragraph of the first chelek of Haggadah is Vehi she'amdo la'avoseinu v'lanu. And that is why we need to tell the story. And then, Tzei Ulamad is the second part. That is actually the story. So the Mishnah says, Daf Kuf Tezayin and Psochim, V'doireish ma'arami oived ovi. This is not only read, doireish. And Chazal explained 4 psukim in Mikra Bekurim. This is the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. It starts when Yaakov and Lavan part, and then a famine hits the land. Reluctantly, Yaakov goes down to Eretz Mitzrayim. The story of Golus Mitzrayim, of Shiabud, of slavery, and of redemption. And that is when we tell about Aseres HaMakos. And that is the second part of the Haggadah, the most important part. That is where you need to focus. Focus and tell the story and elaborate. Stress the nisim. Mitzvah shel Torah l'sapeh b'nisim v'neflois. And then, part number 2 ends with Pesach Matzah v'moroi. And then lefichach anachnu chayovim la'idus. And then, after telling the story, you need to sing the praise. Every day in the morning, how do we start off our day? Moida ani lefonecha melech chai v'kayim, shechzarto bi nishmos yibachem lo. I recently gave a shmus in my koilel, and I asked, what do we need to bear in mind when we say Moida ani lefonecha? Hoda'ah or hodaya? Admission or gratitude? In Lashon Kodesh, Moida has 2 interpretations. Did you ever learn the sugi of Moida b'miktzas? Mona li biyadcha, en lecha biyodi ela chamishim. That's not gratitude. You got alone, you can't say thank you. Yena thank you. He denies 50% of the claim. That is admission. So when we say Moida ani lefonecha, is that admission or gratitude? And I say it is both. Why do I say it's both? This nusach, Moida ani lefonecha melech chai v'kayim shechzarto b'nishmos, is nowhere to be found in Bavli, Yerushalmi, Rambam, Tur, Shulchan Aruch, nowhere. The very first source is Seder Hayom for Reb Moshe ben Mochia. According to the Gemara in Brochas Daf Samach, Rambam, Tur Shulchan Aruch Mem Vav. When you open your eyes in the morning, what are you supposed to say? Elokai, neshama shenosata b'to'eroi. Why don't we do so? The 2 quotes his father Darash. And it's already in Sefer Hayir of Rabbeinu Yoina. Because our hands in the morning are not toher, and we can't say Shem Shemayim before Natilas Yadayim. And that is why we say Moed Ani Lefanecho, which doesn't have Shem Hashem. So it is clear to me that Moed Ani Lefanecho is an abbreviation, a kitzur of Elokai Neshama. It must be that way. So what do we say in Elokai Neshama? אלוקי נשמה שנתת בי טהרו היא, אתו ברוסו, אתו יצרתו, אתו יפחתו בי. So it starts with admission, with recognition, with acknowledgement. Ato berosa, ato yetzarta, ato nafachta bi, v'ato osadet meni. And then we say, Kol zman shana shoma bekir be'moid ani lefonecho. And then admission must bring to gratitude. So when we say moid ani in the morning, it is first of all admission, recognition. You open your eyes in the morning, think about it. Don't take it for granted. Some people go to sleep by night and they do not wake up in the morning. The reason you woke up this morning is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided he deserves another day. That is why I opened my eyes in the morning. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided you deserve another day. Let us see how he will use this day. Will he do tshuva? Will he dedicate this day la'avdai or l'shamroi? Don't take it for granted. It's not to be taken for granted. I acknowledge, I recognize, I admit, it is you. And then, once again, Moidani, thank you, Hashem. And recognition needs to bring to admission and to gratitude. Kosav Ramban, the very same Ramban I quoted before. Tachlis hayetzira harishayna. Ve'ein el elyoin chofetz betachtoinim. Ki im sheyeda ha'adam v'yodeh le'eloikav shebara'oi. The Ramban uses two words, sheyeda v'sheyodeh. He should recognize, acknowledge, and say thank you. So Moida Ani means both. I'm aware, Rabbeinu Shalom, it is you that decided to give me another day, and therefore, thank you, Hashem. And that is Elokai Neshama Shenotato Bi. And that is why part number 2 of the Haggadah leads to part number 3. After we tell the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, it is only natural. Lefichach anachnu chayovim lahoides ulahalel ulishabeach. And that is Hallel and Hallel HaGadol, and that is the third part of the Haggadah. Hayodea ve'eineno modeh rosho. Hamodeh ve'eino yodea shoito. So, sheyeda ha'odam v'yodeh le'eloikav shebaroi. And that is what the Seder is all about. Part number 1 is just stressing the importance. And why is it important? It is important to remember because we will have nisyonis. And not always will HaKadosh Baruch Hu be there making miraculous nisim l'malam ederech hateva for the whole world to see. No. We will need to thrive on nisim nistorim. Not always will we see nisim gluyim. And that is why we need to keep the story alive. And then we tell the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim and Aseres HaMakas and Kriyas Yamsef and all the miracles. And then finally, Lefichach Anachnu Chayovim Loides. And that is what the Leila Seder is all about. But I say, when Pesach comes around, we say Rabbeinu Shalom, we believe in the Nisim HaNistorim. We see them, we feel them. But maybe time has come for some Nisim Gluyim as well. For hundreds of years, we're thriving on Nisim Nistorim. Ad Mosai. Till when, Rabbeinu Shalom? Maybe time has come for some Nisim Gluyim. We long for those Nisim. Anachnu mitgageim lektzat Nisim Gluyim. Yerotzon, we should be zoicha. Ki yameitzeichem me'eretz Mitzrayim arenu niflois. Let's see some Nisim Gluyim. Sheyitkayem banu divrei hanovi ki ayin ba'ayin yiru b'shuv Hashem tzion v'niglo kvoid Hashem. For the whole world to see. V'ra'o kol boso yachdov ki pi Hashem diber. We should be zoicha to be as Mashiach Tzidkenu, to binyan beis hamikdash v'sham noichal min hapsochim v'min hazvochem shiyagia domam al kiyam esbachachu b'meiru v'yameinu amen. The coming Shiur B'Yezeh Hashem will be Isru Chag Pesach, Sunday night, right after Pesach. To all